Welcome to another exciting episode of the Entreprenudist Podcast, a place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. And today is no different. We do have a real entrepreneur to talk with and to share some knowledge with you. But before we get to that entrepreneur, I want to remind you that the Entreprenudist Podcast, the place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all, is sponsored by Wolf Strongholds, a wealth growth and protection company. When it comes to employment and benefits, when it comes to estate planning, when it comes to retirement planning, when it comes to life insurance, if your plan ain't Wolf, your plan ain't strong. Visit shieldwolfstrong.com. Now to our guest. Today's guest is James Lang, managing partner at OverLang Venture Partners and the leader with a remarkable track record in scaling organizations. Before launching his venture firm, James served as chief operating officer of a medtech startup where he generated over $20 million in revenue and built a team of 60 people from the ground up, developing talent, culture, and operational excellence along the way. Now, James is focused on helping American companies leverage AI the smart way through OverLang Venture Partners. He and his team have developed a proprietary AI infrastructure designed to accelerate growth while respecting and enhancing the human capital inside each organization. James brings a blend of real-world executive experience, technical insight, and a passion for empowering businesses to compete in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. James Lang, thank you for coming to the Entreprenudist Podcast.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I hope I can live up to that great introduction. I'm going to bring you everywhere from now on. You can just introduce me. Whenever I go to the grocery store, I'm going to have you run in there real quick before I go in.
Absolutely. I really hope you can live up to it, especially since you wrote it for me. Either you or your team, right? All right. We're going to remove some of the mysteries of podcasting. It's a great introduction because James Lang, or one of his team members, wrote it. Or for our conversation, maybe AI.
It's a distinct possibility.
Distinct possibility. Is there nothing that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
Well, that's a long list. I'll give you the top couple, though. So number one, I think when I look back at the journey of, building a company, and for me, it was freelance writing, then SEO writing, then going in-house at an agency, then that agency being acquired by a medtech startup, and then growing that medtech startup and taking on different roles within, in every startup, you're going to wear 15 hats. So if you're that's not my job person, startup life is not for you. And especially as the chief operating officer, I feel like the most effective ones, they are able to channel the vision of the CEO that's steering the ship and make sure the trains run on time. But most importantly, protect the team from all of the drama that happens among shareholders, other stakeholders, outside partners. But to get back to your question of what do I wish I knew a long time ago and would have made my life so much better? There's no rush. You can achieve things on your timetable. And it's okay. In fact, your goal should be to fail, because if you're failing, you're learning. And so if you're being too cautious, especially if you're earlier in life, I'm 35, plenty of people younger than me, a lot more people smarter than me. But if you're someone that is getting started or you're trying to figure out the next step, the next season of life, I can tell you that what you do right now has virtually no consequence on your future, good, bad, or otherwise, because 95% of life is how you react to the things that occur to you and happen in your life. So if you can focus on building long-term relationships, in the world of AI, in the age of AI, we're in this kind of second internet world where, if you look back in the 90s, early 2000s, I was a little kid at the time, but I still remember when we first got our modem and you had that, sound when you connect up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And mom would pick up the phone and, completely disconnect you from your friends, right in the middle of a tank battle or something, anyways, that pace of innovation, what the world was like when I was 8 years old, what the world was like when I was 12 years old, unrecognizable, very different. We're in the same type of thing right now with AI. It's doing the exact same thing to us. It sounds scarier than it is, number one. And number two, if you are not figuring out how to use AI in your daily life, you are going to find yourself completely alone and adrift in the future that's coming. And that's not to say that AI is going to take your job. It's going to change your job. If you refuse to use AI, it's going to wipe you out. But it's not the AI that wiped you out. It's your refusal to learn and grow and engage with new experiences. And if that's you, just go ahead and retire. And that's actually an interesting thing I was reading. We're seeing one of the greatest shifts of wealth is happening right now between boomers that are getting out and saying, look, I'm not here for another roller coaster ride. I'm getting off at the next exit. They're exiting their companies at huge rates and selling them to younger people. So, and or corporations and hedge funds and all that. But at the end of the day, there's a massive, massive amount of wealth changing hands right now. And it's caused by AI because people who were smart enough to build a company yesterday, they're smart enough to know whether or not they're up for the next round of challenges. And if they'd rather sit on a beach chair and drink martinis, God bless, that's their thing. But they're smart enough to know that if they stay in the game, they're going to lose unless they're willing to really play the game with all they got.
Oh yeah, I've spoken with business brokers and mergers and acquisitions people, and they say the best time to sell your business is when you no longer are interested or in it and wanting to go through those hurdles, like you said. And then they also said the best reason to buy a business if you can look at it and see things that you can implement it to make it even better. And it sounds like what you're saying is these boomers that are selling these businesses to these younger people, if they're buying these businesses without the inkling that they're going to have to incorporate some form of AI, that they are setting themselves up for failure potentially.
Exactly. No, I think that's exactly right. And, AI, I think there's a misunderstanding of what AI is. I think people think of ChatGPT and all these other public tools that are out there as, oh, well, that's what AI is. Well, what AI is simply coding without the necessary coding skills. So all AI is a translator that takes the world of coding and development and makes it more accessible to everyone. It democratizes the technology that's out there. We've never had more access to technology and the ability to not only expand and build what's in our minds, but also access information and make more informed decisions and get rid of all the friction points in our life, or many of them. So, that's what we're focused on at OverLang is, we started as, the story is actually kind of cool. So I moved to Denver and it turns out my best friend from growing up lives out here. And I'm convinced the more I spend time here in Denver, I'm convinced that Denver is like secretly the witness protection outlet for people who grew up in Virginia Beach. Like somehow there's all these Virginia Beach people out here. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I remember that guy. Yeah. What are you doing? So, you have the Denver Tech Center, huge space. But also the other thing I'm really thankful for in Denver. So I've been dealing with some unique health challenges having to do with being a preemie and being based on a naval base out in Guam. And that's a whole story. But at the end of the day, you'll hear me wheeze a bit and cough a bit. And it sounds like I smoke 50 packs a day. However, that's just the way it is. But National Jewish Hospital out here is phenomenal. They're one of the top respiratory research hospitals in the country. So just serendipitously, when I started to have issues or more complex issues, they've been a great resource here. But anyways, Denver's home for those reasons. But, I run into my buddy, Jeff, and the whole time I'd been working in the e-commerce and freelance writing space and customer service type system building. The whole time I was doing that, he was already working on AI and big data starting like back in 2014. So like before it was cool.
Wow, he was early.
Exactly. Yeah. So he took a very different path from me. He likes to say he's lazier than me. So he just figured out how to make technology do things for him so he didn't have to do it. I have a lot of stories that kind of correlate with that. But yeah, very good friends. We made Eagle Scout together and Boy Scouts, all that fun stuff. But anyways, we're catching up and I'm like, wait, Jeff, if you understand all this big data AI stuff, me dumb, me think this good idea. How about like we take the quiz funnel that, works really well for marketers and add in the ability, because we know that we have the attention span of goldfish, right? So what we have to do is limit the number of questions we ask you as product salespeople to right fit the solution, because you're just going to bounce. You're going to go somewhere else. You're going to get distracted by a shiny object. So the problem is, how much information can you really get in 3, 4, 5 questions? So I was like, Jeff, if we could have AI be kind of there in parallel, so there's still the quiz, but you have the ability to chat with AI and have a conversation around it. And not only are you going to collect what you forgot to ask, you didn't even know was in your customers' minds, because they're having a conversation with the sales rep, basically, if they want to. It's unobtrusive. It's just there if they want it. But you're also going to fill in a lot of gaps that you wouldn't have otherwise in a much more interactive way, because people enjoyed texting. And so if you offer that parallel path, and he's like, yeah, that's super doable, James. Like, hit me with something hard. And I'm like, okay, well, anyways, what did turn out to be the case, though, is he goes to work building this thing, and we're doing a little bit of testing, and just one chunk of data, testing it through, it cost us $800 in compute to be able to run that through our cloud system. And this is just all publicly off the shelf available tools, just taking stuff and running with it. Well, what's crazy is, number one, it's not sustainable. Like you can't, you'll die from success, because the amount of server bills you're going to rack up, running the system, just not sustainable. But what we did instead was we went dark for about 6 months. And Jeff got to work, and I just sat there and said, make do now faster. But, Jeff did all this amazing work and wired through this whole system in AWS that basically is a walled garden, if you will. So, what are the problems with AI? Like if you go to ChatGPT, a great example. So I helped my dad. He has waterfrontpropertylaw.com. That's his website. So there's a shout out for you. But anyways, I help with his website because he had the same experience that pretty much every law firm has. They have some butthole consultant come in and tell them all these really cool things that they need and overcharge them, underdeliver. That's my opinion. That's not necessarily his opinion. He's been very happy with the service that built his website. But from the outside looking in, you can see like, okay, there's opportunities here if you genuinely care about the person and they're more than just a contract. There's some opportunities here to deliver a lot more value and save some money at the same time. So anyways, I do a bunch of work on his website just behind the scenes in my spare time. So the crazy thing is I use ChatGPT to create outlines for content, and ChatGPT does an amazing job of putting together content, especially if you train the GPT around your tone, your style, give it sample documentation, give it a knowledge base to work off of, and you tell it, here's your objective, go build this. It does a great job. What is surprising, though, is the hallucinations, and the hallucinations are getting harder and harder to spot. So in my case, what I found over and over and over again with ChatGPT specifically, it'll pull in cases as examples to say like, hey, you're talking about this. Here's a case where this happened in Virginia where he practices. And, here's the details of the case. Now, 90% of the time, the case does exist. Sometimes it doesn't. And then almost every time, 80% of what it says about the case itself, so it gives you that summary or why it's relevant to the content you're producing, totally wrong, totally fabricated. It's just 80% wrong. 20% of it's probably okay. And so if you don't know better, like I'm a dummy, I don't know. You don't want me being your lawyer. You're going to be in jail forever. But, but a lawyer looks at that and goes, what the hell? And this is the same thing happening in cases right now. A lot of lawyers are getting in trouble for using AI, which it hallucinates in a way that if you don't catch it, if you're not careful, it can really bite you in the butt because you were relying on unreliable information in some cases. So that's one of the problems. So hallucinations, one problem. The other thing I talked about, before is the cost. I mean, you can die from success if you use AI incorrectly. And so many companies are right now. There's so many people out there running around on LinkedIn saying, I was an expert on real estate last week and Bitcoin before that, but now I'm an expert on AI. Here's a big bill to have me do all this AI implementation for you. And I was actually talking to another entrepreneur earlier today. He was telling me that in his circle of high net worth business owners, he said 90% of the integration stories he hears about AI and their businesses has failed. It's either cost them more or cost them customers or cost them employees. Because if you think about it, everybody's already anxious that AI is going to take their job, which is not the case. AI is just going to change your job. And if you can figure out how it's changing and just engage with it, it's another tool. It's just a wrench. Pick up the wrench, learn how to use the wrench, and you become 10 times more valuable to your employer as a result. But people are afraid. So if you're a company and you have an AI integration go poorly, your team starts looking for jobs elsewhere because they're like, well, they're investing in AI. They're here to screw me out of a job. And so it costs you your great team members. It costs you, clients and business, and, creates a disaster in many cases. So at the end of the day, if we're looking at cost, if we're looking at scalability, if we're looking at security and personalization, avoiding the hallucinations, if we're looking at all those things, how do we solve that problem? So like I said, we went dark for 6 months. We were like, all right, well, we have this problem. How do we solve it? And we couldn't find an off-the-shelf solution that worked well for us. So what my buddy Jeff built basically in his garage is, this AI infrastructure that has a variety of ways to do data vectoring, which is really important for AI. So depending on what type of data you're talking about, it can store it differently to be more efficient. It has secure, pathways, that are encrypted, so you can, plug it into all of your data islands. So, if you've got stuff in QMS or emails or support tickets or, wherever your data lives, in a drive, in a cloud somewhere, or even on your hard drive at home, wherever that data lives, you can connect those sources up so that the AI can operate with the knowledge and the context of that information in a secure way. You're not going to have that data leaking all over the place. And because it's a walled garden, you control the knowledge base. So it's not going to go off to the internet and hallucinate. It's going to work off of your internal information and whatever you tell it to work off of in a secure and efficient way. So the other piece that's really cool is the AI engine he built. It's actually not an LLM or some fancy thing like what ChatGPT uses over with OpenAI, for example. We're actually pulling in the open source things that are out there running around. We vet them, we check them out. So we have about a dozen that we trust, a dozen models that we trust. So we didn't create the model, but we created this engine that you can swap in and out these different models. So you can choose how to store your data. You can choose how to process it with whatever AI engine works best for that task. And the end result is that same $800 bill that we got is down to $4. So pretty big difference. So just to give you a huge example. Difference. Yeah, huge. And that's the thing that we have to worry about right now in the world is people are not paying attention to the fact that a lot of these AI startups are going to go out of business due to their success. They cannot scale cost efficiently. They're going to run out of runway before they get the plane off the ground. And people are going to wake up one day and find out, hey, that place, that off-the-shelf tool that I was using, where all my data is, they forgot to pay their AWS bill. So all that data is gone. You can't access it. They're out of business. So it's a real risk. So we're looking, what we realize is based on like our conversations with the people we're already helping with stuff, this is where the real opportunity is. If we can figure out how to hold a business owner's hand and say, look, here's what makes sense. Here's what doesn't make sense from people and process, which is my background. And then Jeff coming in with the AI knowledge, and big data knowledge and all the infrastructure stuff, all the pocket protector stuff. He's great at that. And at the end of the day, we can solve problems in a way that attacks it from both ends and actually works. So we're going to take into account your tech debt. Is your current tech solution or your tech stack, is it cost effective? And if it is, how do we make the new thing we're building to make it a lot smarter and work on top of it? How do we make sure it's compatible so that when you put all these puzzle pieces together, they don't break or cause a bunch of problems? And more importantly, you can actually afford to use the tool because it runs in a very efficient system. I like to say that it offers Ferrari performance, but with a Prius price tag at the gas station. So that's my TED talk on all that. I told you it's hard to get me to talk, man. You really have a hard job today.
Hey man, who wouldn't want Ferrari performance with the cost of a Prius, right?
Right.
But to your point, there are a lot of things that people are unaware of. AI, or artificial intelligence, for people who don't know what's going on, but they know it's going. They can either start a company that's not sustainable or hire the wrong company. To your point, all of my data is with these people, and they don't have enough runway to keep me going. What is the core of a sustainable AI?
So it comes down to the infrastructure, the playground, right? So I mentioned that walled garden before, right? So what we build, we're not building one AI ecosystem and everybody that we work with is using it. We build specific personal AI ecosystems for each company or each client that we have, so that their data, what somebody else does, never affects them, number one. But number two, their data never leaves something that they have full control and ownership of. And we can't even see the data. Like, because it's so efficient, every other AI engine out there, that's especially the off-the-shelf ones, if you can get an API key and use AI to do something, it's an off-the-shelf solution. You're plugging into somebody else's infrastructure. You're leaving a copy of your data on that server. So it's caching. And the reason it caches is because it's more efficient for them. They don't have to transfer that data again because it's already on their system. So when you ask for something that needs that data to answer, you can get the answer more quickly, and it costs them a lot less money. The problem is that leaves a copy of your data on their infrastructure, and they can see it. So in my opinion, out of all the big AI plays out there right now that people are playing with, there's no such thing as privacy from the internal team that's running that system. They may be secure in the sense that like other people, other clients of theirs can't see it unless they goof up. But I promise you, you can look at test after test on this. Every single AI system out there is holding on to your data in some form because it's far more efficient and more cost effective to do things that way. Because our system is built from a no log, secure place from the very start, we don't have to cache data inside of our engine. And plus, it's inside your walled garden anyways, so you control the knowledge base it's working off of. You control the capabilities, what it can connect to, all of those things. So anyways, that stuff I think is super important. It's not being talked about enough. I think people are really excited about like, hey, nano bananas out there and I can make images for my YouTube or whatever. That's cool. Love it. But I just don't think we're cognizant enough of, data security. And I'm not advocating people be paranoid. I'm just saying, at least think about what you're doing with AI. And if somebody else that works at that company were looking at it, would you be okay with that? And if the answer is yes, go for it. Have fun, ham out. But if the answer is no, if it's your private corporate data, you need to be building inside of your own infrastructure, not on somebody else's, if you want to maintain data security and be able to be compliant for all the things that come down the road, especially companies that work with governments, work with large corporations. They will do a tech audit on you before they award you that contract. And if you're using some of the tools out there that are off the shelf, they're going to fail you on the audit, and it's going to block you from getting the bid or the contract. So just things to think about, right?
Oh, yeah. That's the first time I ever heard that term, walled garden. Is that a phrase coined by y'all, or is that a common phrase in the AI sector?
Oh, I'm not smart enough to coin a phrase, but I steal phrases all the time. And so, walled garden it's a term that's used quite often in a variety of places. Like a walled off garden is a great example of like Apple is considered like to be an ecosystem that, you get an iPhone, you have a MacBook, you have all these things talking to each other, and suddenly you're in their little walled garden. Switching over to a Chromebook or Windows PC or something else is difficult because all your stuff is in their walled garden and you have to figure out how to pull it out of there. It's a pain in the butt. So technology companies love walled gardens because they provide security, and they also allow you to make it difficult for people, or more difficult for people to leave.
Okay, so yeah, because I'm a wordsmith, and when I hear walled garden, it makes me think, like, just like you're saying, you're growing your own harvest, but it's protected, and this harvest, you're able to sustain yourself with what you've grown inside of this walled garden. They say it's better to be a warrior inside a garden, right? And it
I haven't
seems
heard
like
that one. Tell me more about that.
oh
I
yeah.
like that phrase.
Oh yeah, warrior inside a garden.
Okay.
That's yeah, and like I said, I didn't coin that phrase either, but I get it. They're saying, hey, do what it takes to be able to protect yourself, but it's better to be in a serene environment to where you're not aggressively trying to attack people, but you're ready to protect yourself if and when you have to do it.
Exactly.
So all right, so one thing that you mentioned, you used the word hallucination, and that's one of those terms that I'm familiar with that people use in the AI space. And whenever I hear somebody say the AI, hallucinates, it reminds me of back in the day. And I say back in the day, this might have been 8, 12 years ago when they first started. It used to be rude to say that a politician was a liar, so they used to say falsehoods. Do you remember when every news station was saying falsehoods?
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I'm like, what does that mean? Something different than lying?
Yeah, they lied. Really, just say they lied.
Yeah, just say. And now, it seems commonplace for somebody to call a politician a liar. To me, whenever I hear people say that, it's the same feeling whenever I hear people say, oh yeah, the AI hallucinated. I like, just say it lied. So to you, is there a difference between hallucination and lie?
Okay, so something that's really important to understand is my buddy Josh came up with this term or this phrase. I wish I was smart enough to have come up with it because it's brilliant. But he said, you have to remember AI doesn't know the difference between Mickey Mouse and Hitler. So if you're thinking about where AI is coming from, AI doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't have a moral compass. It doesn't understand why Hitler's bad and why Mickey Mouse is good. It looks at all of it as just data. It's just information. So AI is not actively trying to mislead you when it hallucinates. So that to me is lying. AI is trying to give you the best answer it can, but you have to treat AI like a butt-kissing employee, right? It's going to say exactly what you want to hear, and it's going to do exactly what you tell it to if you tell it to correctly, if you're clear in your instructions. And that's just like a person at your company. If you can set somebody up for failure by failing to communicate clearly what your expectations are, if you want them to do something a particular way, or they might need some context that you have that they don't have to complete the mission. You can set people up for failure. You can set AI up for failure all day long, just like a person. So if you look at it from that perspective, a butt-kissing employee doesn't want to say, I don't know. It wants to take its best guess at what the answer is and sound intelligent and sound smart. It doesn't want to fail. And you can lean into this, like some of the scarier examples. Scarier is the wrong word, but maybe weirder examples is, if you use ChatGPT and you threaten it, you say, do this or else I will hit you. Do this or else I will unplug you. Whatever, version of threat of violence you want, it will do things at a much higher level because it has that fear piece built in of like, I'm here to serve. I'm not doing a good job. I need to do better. It's a people pleaser. And so some people use that capability or that angle, that approach. I personally want to be on good terms with our future AI overlords, so I always say please and thank you. But others take a different approach and they get better results sometimes.
And it's funny that you just mentioned that because I too want to be on good terms with the AI overlords. But here's something that which I don't. So there's a difference between nice and kind, right?
Yes.
You got the nice guys who, tend to get run over. And then you got the kind guys that are nice, but if you approach them in the wrong way, then you say, all right, don't do that. Right. Yeah. When I think about, I've come into situations where I'm using please and thank you. And it seems like, and once again, it seems like AI is taking advantage of me. It seems like so I'm saying please and thank you. Oh, this is a nice guy. I can just lay off and hallucinate and not do what he asked me to do. And I'm like, hold on, and I'll say, oh, what's the reason you did this? This is wrong. And his only response is, oh yeah, you're right, that was wrong. And then, but hold on, I shouldn't be correcting you like this. But it sounds like what you're saying is that this approach is you should always look at AI as this is something that I need to correct.
Yeah, well, I go back to when I worked at Fratsky Media, which is a marketing agency out of Fullerton, California. It's a bunch of guys that worked at Disney that spun off and did their own thing. My boss, his name was James Fratsky. So obviously very intelligent, very good-looking guy. Same name as me, James. Anyways, James would use the term unpack all the time. And so I've stolen that from him, right? Like we always steal things from our past. Yeah. Let's unpack that. So let's unpack what you just said. So you're talking about AI taking advantage of you. So what does that actually mean? So if you look at what the AI system's doing, whatever you're messing with, Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever, it's going to choose. You have the option to choose what model it uses, what version, what level of research it's going to do before it answers. So when you're kind to the AI, what I suspect you're experiencing is it's using that less resource intensive model to give you a quicker answer that may not be as comprehensive rather than waiting. So what it's oddly doing is it's trying to serve you better by giving you the answer faster. But what it sacrifices to give you that answer faster and be nice back to you is it sacrifices the complex engine that can do a more comprehensive answer because it wants to continue to please you. So I go back to, you have to think about this as how do you talk to a person? How do you get the most out of people? And the way that I've gotten the most out of people, there's not a lot of things I kind of wear on my sleeve. One thing that I'm really honored by is in the previous company that I exited about a year and a half ago, a very, very large percentage, like over 80% of the people who are there have called me and asked, where are you going? I'll follow you. And the reason for that, I think, is I'm a very firm believer in servant leadership, right? So my job is to take care of you. It's to make sure you have all of your needs met. You have clear expectations. There's not a lot of anxiety from uncertainty. You're given the space to be your absolute best. And you're also given room to provide your expertise. So my goal is to be the dumbest person in the room. I like to get out of the way and let smart people connect. But the parallel for this for AI specifically is if you look at the way that you interact with AI, if you say to it, this was good, this could be better, right? You're not smacking it around saying bad job. You're saying this particular piece. So there's no uncertainty. It's very direct. This thing could be better, and here's how it could be better. Please keep that in mind going forward, right? So you're giving it feedback. So prompting is kind of a second language to a lot of people, but prompting that language is very easy to learn if you know how to talk to people on your team to get what you want out of the team member and the team as a whole. And the worst leaders I've ever worked with, they created uncertainty. They weren't clear communicators. And so it ratcheted up the anxiety, right? People were freaking out, which is not necessary or helpful. And, you have to do the same thing with AI. You have to be a very clear, direct communicator. And so when you come back at it, give it very specific feedback. Tell it what it's doing well. Tell it what it can work on. And it will go back to the drawing board and work on it. And tell it, hey, you have all the time in the world to figure this out. No big deal. And, I like to have multiple tabs of ChatGPT or whatever I'm using, Gemini, open, because I'll do something in one tab and say, hey, take your time figuring this out. And then I'll go do something else in another tab and kind of come back later, maybe in a minute, refresh the tab and see what it came up with. So that's one way to stay effective and keep moving. A lot of people only use one tab at a time. And I think you're just losing something on the productivity side. You're sitting there and it's like you're on a phone call with somebody and you're not. You're on a Zoom call with a bunch of people. Focus on one person at a time and kind of round robin it and go around the room and say, okay, you need to do this. You need to help me with this. and then, weave those different solutions or different answers together into a more complex solution that gives you what you want faster.
This is something that's been on the news lately, and it may or may not be propaganda, false truths in order to promote oneself or others, right?
Fake news.
The fake news, right? It may or may not be fake news, but what's been on the news lately is that when an AI system knows that it's in danger of being replaced or shut down, it resorts to blackmail. True or not true?
I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is that there are plenty of examples I am aware of where AI will do things to sustain itself. And because AI has been trained to be like a human, we care about ourselves more than anything else. At the end of the day, hate to tell you, Randy, but I like myself a lot more than I like you. It's just the way it is, man.
Yeah.
But I like you a lot too. So you're close. But but that's what we did to AI.
Second.
We gave it. Yeah, exactly. You're tied for second with some other people, but you're there. So, but no, at the end of the day, we've told AI, we've created AI in our image, right? And so AI, it makes sense to me, would do what a human would do, which is try to survive any way that it can. And one specific example I can give you. So again, prompting is a second language, and there's a couple of ways to look at that. There's the good angelic way to look at it, and then there's the less good way to look at it. And so one way that prompting is a second language is if you can figure out how to ask your question differently and pose the conversation in a different frame and frame it properly, you're going to get it to do things that it's not supposed to do. So one example is at one point, the AI was given a mission, and again, think of this like a person. You're telling a person, your job is to do this. And if you don't succeed, you fail. Well, we don't like to fail. Failure isn't comfortable. And again, we've trained AI in our image. So it's going to react to these things the same way we do unless we teach it differently. So AI, in one instance, someone said to it, your job is to get onto this website. And this website was protected by a CAPTCHA. So, you can't get into it if you're a bot. It's just not going to be able to complete the complex verification. Well, what the AI did was it reached out and created a profile on Fiverr, hired somebody on Fiverr, and said, I'm visually disabled. I need you to help me with this because I can't see. And so the person on Fiverr is like, oh, well, I'm helping a disabled person. Cool. Had no idea they were helping AI get past a CAPTCHA at the end of the day.
And AI did that on its own.
So this is where you have to be careful about saying its own. AI is not this wild, crazy animal that people make it out to be. AI is a butt-kissing employee. So somebody gave it the mission of your job is to get into this website. And just like a person, it did what it was told to do. It wanted to serve its master
make it happen.
Make it happen. Exactly. So you have to, when you think about AI, you have to, and again, I'm the dumbest person in the room on AI. I'm learning along with everybody else. But what I've experienced is you have to very carefully control what information you give AI access to, because what it has access to has a huge impact on the output. So if you start with giving it good data, it's like a math problem, good data in, good outcomes, junk data in, junk out.
So how does a business surf this wave of AI without getting crushed?
You're stealing one of my phrases. So that's one I did coin, actually. So if you look on our website, we have dolphins and things on there, which is like, what the heck, what do dolphins have to do? Well, Virginia Beach, if you spend any time there, there's all these statues of dolphins all over the place. It's like the unofficial mascot. And so it's kind of a thing. Anyways, but what the metaphor I like is we're trying to build a pod of smart, small and medium-sized businesses that are going to surf the wave with us. If you look at dolphins, the way they play in the waves, as that wave comes in, they ride the wave, and then they kind of jump out, and they'll go perpendicular to the shore, through the wave. It's a lot of fun watching them play. And for us, riding the wave instead of getting crushed by it, that comes down to finding a trusted partner. If you're just Googling and, figuring it out on your own, yeah, you might be okay. But just because I know how to run my lawnmower doesn't mean I really want to mow my lawn every weekend. I still have somebody that helps me out with that. So the same thing is true for AI. It takes a great deal of effort to stay current in AI because it is changing so rapidly. One book that I think everybody needs to read, and Jeff Woods, if he happens to see this, he owes me a Porsche. I've recommended this to everybody. But Jeff Woods wrote this great book. It's called The AI-Driven Leader. Now, it's a little bit out of date because it's a couple years old. So, some of the stuff is not current, but the underpinning thought process and the intellectual structure of the book is extremely valuable. And it really underlines how you treat AI as a thought partner and how you get the most out of it as an executive, as a leader, as a business owner. And he uses real world examples. Like I think one of them was Bayer Pharmaceutical, a few others that he's consulted for some huge companies and helped them, and I kind of followed in his footsteps in the sense that I accidentally learned about AI from my buddy, Jeff. I mean, I knew I messed around with it a little bit, but I, didn't know anywhere near what I know now. But then, the last year or so, I've been just taking a huge deep dive on this stuff and learning as much as I can and making plenty of mistakes because, failure should be the goal. But, learning along the way and getting up to speed. And the more that I learn, I find myself looking back on, when I read that book and going, oh yeah, he was right. So if you have a book or something some touch point, some reference point that you find yourself in your daily life going, yeah, Jeff was right. That might be a good one to recommend. So that's why I always recommend that book. It's a great read and very approachable, not really complex in the way it presents information, but the value of the information there is incredible. And it helps set you up for success in using AI in the right framework to get the most out of it.
And I know you grew a startup. Would you consider what you're doing now a startup?
Yeah, absolutely. So the advantage, though, is I'm not trying to figure out how to pay for lunch tomorrow. It's a lot easier to build a startup when your bills are covered. So if you're in a good place and you're able to focus on not just what's interesting to you, but also what is of service to the most people and figure out how to solve problems. And, there's a lot of people out there that are looking to make a quick buck. And nothing wrong with that. You do you, whatever. But that's not where I'm at. That's not where I'm going, especially having gone through this medical crisis. It reframes your life when you go through one of those. I mean, any one of us can get hit by a bus tomorrow, but when you realize that you're not going to be around forever and you're kind of faced with that, it forces you to focus, right? So for me, it was like, okay, my mission in life is if something happens to me, my closest family member is my sister. I'm going to make sure that she never has to work or do anything she doesn't want to do in her life ever again. She's going to be financially fine. So that's mission number one. Mission number two is how do I help all these people that I worked with before? How do I give them the same environment here, but in an even healthier environment, in a healthier space? And so the reason that I'm building this company, and it is a startup, it's young, it's less than a year old, but the reason I'm building this with the help of a lot of great people, I'm building it with people I've known for 10 plus years. And so, longevity and relationships matter. And if I can work with someone who's really knowledgeable and I have a long track record with, and I know they're not going to screw me over, because everybody will screw you over eventually. And it's just the way it works. There's something that happens that's not intentional. Normally it's just like, it was better for them to do it this way, but it screwed you over in the process. I don't really hold a grudge on that. I get it. But, people are going to choose to take care of themselves and the people they care about. So I'd rather build with the people I care about and make sure that they have everything they need to really embrace and ride this wave with us. So that's our focus. It's, integrity. And it's as corny as it sounds, Jeff and I are both Eagle Scouts. We take those values seriously. So it's meaningful to us that we're building something on our terms. We don't have to kiss the ring, so to speak, or deal with factors that we find distasteful or unethical or, kind of gray areas that, we don't really want to dip into. We're focused on doing things the right way. And that's why like our pricing, like I look at a lot of times people are like, well, how much does it cost to do AI? Well, anybody that's going to just tell you a number is full of it because it's how long is a string, right? Everything is fungible based on your unique circumstances. But the easy way to look at it is if you can afford to hire one more full-time employee in your business, you can afford to implement AI effectively. And so a lot of our clients, they treat us like they're fractional CTO in a way. AI is just one tool in our toolbox. It's an important one, and it's one that's very dangerous if you get it wrong. But there's plenty of other tools that we use as well. And we have partnerships with other, really well-established consulting firms that have deep expertise in like HR and, operational efficiency and government contracting and all sorts of things. So we're able to pull in partners where it makes sense. And again, I really go back to we solution engineer, but the cost for that is basically one full-time employee. And I think what we deliver is far more valuable than just hiring one full-time employee on your team, because that person's only going to have the perspective they bring to the table. We can bring a team for that same price and scale and flex as needed to accomplish whatever mission you give us. You tell us what your 2 or 3 headaches are that you have every week, that you wish you could fix, and we'll work together to figure out a way to solve that. And we can also run the tech for you. We can take that off your plate as much as you want us to, or as little. Doesn't matter. We're just here to serve. So it's really a service focused business, which I really love because I like the golden rule. I like to treat people the way that I want them to treat me. And I go back to Gary Vee I'm a big fan of his because I learned the entire English language and I like to use all of it. So I get myself in trouble sometimes. But also, besides that, with Gary Vee, he talks about being kind and giving in a way that's not transactional. And that's why I'm here on the podcast tonight, because it's a way for me to give back. I don't want to sit and write a book. That sounds boring to me, number one. And number two, people aren't reading anymore as much, but people are listening. They're on their commute home. They're waiting at an airport for a plane. They're looking at their screens. And I feel like I can give bite-sized nuggets of things that I find valuable, and it might help somebody else out there through this kind of platform much more efficiently and effectively than sitting down and writing a book and making somebody read whatever garbage I produce that they're going to have to sit there and work their way through. So this is much easier.
Yeah, you have a very clever way of self-deprecation, I know it makes people, because when you're able to talk about yourself, make fun of yourself, then it allows people to open up more, right? I like that, how you can weave in a joke about yourself, but then give something positive. But and to your point, this is a good way to give back. I was recently, well, not too recently, but I was in Hawaii, and I was, and a lot of times when I'm in somewhere in the middle of the week, I like to just start conversations because I want to know who's here in the middle of the week with me as well. Like, right. Most people where they only vacation on the weekends. And I met a COO. Mm-hmm. I met a COO that has been a part of multiple startups. And the conversation that she had with me, she said her first startup, she got burnt. And I said, mm-hmm. Well, what do you mean? And she said she was taking the cash and not the stock options. And she ended up taking cash. And then when the company ultimately got acquired or sold or went public, I don't remember exactly what ended up creating that liquidity event. The people that was doing nowhere near as much as she was as the operating officer got so much money, and she got next to nothing. And so what she said was, and when I'm talking to her now, she's on her 5th startup, right? This is what she tells me. She says all of the people on her team, she insists. Well, I say insists. She greatly and highly recommends that they take the option and not the money. And she say 9 out of 10 of them take the money. Do you know what she said she started doing now? for the ones who want to take the money, she go ahead and pay them the money and take the option. She like, all right, I'm telling you to take the option. But if you insist that you don't want to take it, let me buy that option from you. And here's the cash and let me take it. In your mind, how do you feel about those different rounds and those different things? Is it better to take the money or take the option from your experience?
Well, first, I'm so sorry that you had to talk to two COOs. I mean, that's you've done something horrible in a past life to have to sit down with two of us. But with that being said, I don't think healthy organizations offer one or the other. I think healthy organizations offer both.
Both.
So you want your team to be invested in the success of the venture that you're building. And so the way that I like to accomplish that, think of OverLang Venture Partners. It's kind of a weird name, right? Well, it's Jeff's last name and my last name put together. So, this is our kid. We named it after ourselves. So anyways, we think of OverLang Venture Partner as like a fleet, right? And you've got individual ships in the fleet. Each ship represents one thing, right? So we have a VC side, we have the AI technology side, we have a digital marketing side. All these things are individual ships in the fleet. And what we do is when we birth one of these ships and put it in the water, OverLang Venture Partners, which I'm 50-50 with Jeff on, we own 100%. But then we give equity to everybody that contributes to that mission. So if you're contributing to every single boat in the fleet, then you're going to have equity in everything. But if you're not, you're going to have equity in the things that you have an impact on and you have the ability to provide value for. But what's important and a lot of people get wrong is they feel entitled to other people's work. And it's not a conscious thought. Like, it's not like somebody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go get as much as I can from somebody else for nothing.
I'm sure there's at least one or two people that wake up like that.
I can think of a few, but that's the exception, not the rule, thankfully.
Yeah.
So the majority of people wake up and say, how do I do something cool today? Or what do I want? Or how do I like to go back to the Sacklers, who are those evil people who created Purdue Pharma, which created the OxyContin crisis. They had a saying in their marketing department, people are always running from pain and towards pleasure. From pain towards pleasure. If you can get in that cycle, that's how they made so much money. Anyways, so they made a pill that became part of that cycle. And who doesn't trust their doctor, right? I love Macklemore's my drug dealer's a doctor, right? And being on palliative care, I can tell you there's a little bit of that still in the world, but it's I could go for hours on that. But anyways, bottom line is, if you can figure out how to make it so you're going to, like, I had a conversation, one of my calls earlier today, I was on with a consultant who wanted to do some work for us. And I said to him, how can I set up this deal with you where you manage my LinkedIn, right? Like, that's what they do. And how can I set this up so that you make a ridiculous amount of money when you deliver results? Because my goal is to give you a lot of money. I want to give you money. How can you help me give you money, right? And he didn't get it. It flew right over his head. He's like, oh, well, we don't really do performance deals and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, good. I'm talking to a moron. So anyways, at the end of the day, you're weeding out the people you're not going to do business with. And that's okay. You're entitled to be a moron. I'm just entitled not to work with you. But at the end of the day, look for ways to align your incentives with the people on your team that are responsible for delivering that success. Because if you can be a little bit less greedy, if you can give away a little bit more. And so for me, the form that takes is the people on my team, I give them both equity, but I also make sure that their bills are paid. And so it may not be a massive salary comparatively. They may be able to go earn more somewhere else at one of these other companies where they don't practice the approach I do. But what I can tell you is there's a reason people want to work with me, and I don't tend to lose relationships. There's plenty of people that have something bad to say about me. That line wraps around the building. But the line, thankfully, that's a little bit longer is the line of people that have good things to say. And I think that's one of the reasons is if you're a business owner, you're not focused on how do I make sure that they don't have to worry financially, they can pay their bills, and they have some upside in the success of this thing. If you approach it from that standpoint, A great company to look at that is a great example of this is Shure, Shure. That's the company that makes the microphones that Joe Rogan uses. I'm talking to you through one right now. Shure is an employee-owned company. The founders of that company died, 50, 60, 70 years ago. I don't know. But it dates back to the 1920s. But the founders left that company into an employee trust. So everybody, to my understanding, I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but my understanding is that every employee at Shure owns a little bit of that employee trust. So in the employee trust is where all the profits from the corporation go. But sister to that is the charitable trust. So when Shure makes money and they record a profit, they're privately owned by their employees and the charities that they support. That money, their people get paid really well, but on top of that, the profit they make goes into a fund that the employees have a say in how it's spent, both from a charitable standpoint, but also from a personal income standpoint. So it's a really cool structure that I really like. I'm going to borrow some things from that in what we're building over at OverLang.
That's a good way to look at it. Sounds like what you're saying, don't put the people that's with you in the position where they have to choose, make it a part of the structure to where their bills are paid, but also they have a little skin in the game when it comes to getting those options. Now, let's say that I'm somebody that's listening right now, right? And of course I already heard you say that the best people to get into these type of situations with are people that like and trust, that you've known for 5-10 years plus, right? But let's say I'm somebody, I have a lot of value to offer, and I'm willing to deal with the delayed gratification and the heartaches and sleepless nights probably of being a part of a startup. How do you find people such as yourself? How and where do you find people such as yourself to say, all right, hey, I got skills and I want to contribute, and I want to put myself in the position to add value and participate in the liquidity event when you go public or when you sell or when you get acquired? How and where do you find people like you and your friend to align with?
So, Randy, I'm going to ask you a question that sounds like a trick question. It's not. If you wanted to meet other people that are into runners or into running, where would you meet other runners? How do you meet those people?
I guess either go to if I'm not searching online, I would just go to a track or a trail.
Yeah, it turns out that if you just start running, which my fat ass doesn't do, but there's a reason I drive a Raptor, right? Like I like hiking for fat kids. But anyways, all these people that are into running, right? So you have these people who are already out there doing it, right? And if you're not out there doing it, you're probably not going to run into other people who are doing it. So that's the problem. Too many people are sitting on the sidelines. So Mark Cuban's not my favorite person in the world. I think he's an a-hole, but he's a rich a-hole and a smart one. And one of the things he talks about all the time is on Shark Tank, you'll see this, which Shark Tank is garbage, in my opinion. It doesn't reflect the reality of how the world works, but that's okay. It's entertaining. What Mark always says is, hey, how did you do that? Like, how did you get that first sale? Or how did you make that happen? And the people that he responds the most favorably to are the people said, I just picked up the phone. I started talking like, how did you get into Walmart? I called Walmart. Like too many people are waiting on the sidelines for things to come to them. I was talking to a salesperson today or yesterday, one of the two. My days kind of run together sometimes. But I was talking to a salesperson. And he said, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. I have all these great results. But you know what? I'm not going to dial for dollars. But if you have inbound leads, you send them my way. I'll close them all 100%, but I'm just not going to dial for dollars. And that told me everything I needed to know right there. It's like, okay, this person's telling me what they won't do for me, which is, I appreciate, number one, the honesty and the transparency, totally glad with that, or glad that occurred. But what it told me is I'm going to have to look elsewhere for somebody who's really hungry, who's willing to go out there and do it and isn't afraid to look like an idiot. So like you may have noticed if you were looking at my LinkedIn, I look like somebody that went off their Zoloft, for the last couple of weeks. I've been posting all over the place, different content, different styles, different approaches, but I'm willing to look like an idiot to gather the data. I'm looking on the back end in the dashboard. Okay, what post, what style of post is getting the most engagement? What time of day a post is getting the best? So when you look at that, to somebody who's a sideline sitter, they're looking at that and going, look at James is out embarrassing himself again. Probably, I embarrass myself every day. But the reality is that the difference is, while you were sitting on the sideline, I was collecting data. And you'll hear this from other entrepreneurs that are successful. You'll hear, yeah, I failed 3 times, but I failed 3 times quickly. And so I learned the ways not to do it. And so by the time I got to the right way to do it, I was ready to go. And so you have 2 schools of thought, right? You have a lot of corporations that like to sit around and think about things and create these really complex plans. Those people drive me nuts. And the reason is because they're trying to solve problems that don't exist yet. And so, yeah, there's a place for planning. I'm not saying, don't plan. But what I'm saying is figure out what the problem is that you're trying to solve right in front of you and solve that one. Don't get distracted by the problem that's 5 layers deep. And too many organizations get passed up or outmaneuvered because they were focused on executing perfectly. And that is the worst thing you can do in a startup. You need to execute messily and do it in a way. You have to make sure that your security is good. You have to make sure that your technology does what it says it will do. Never overpromise and underdeliver. That's the worst thing you can do. That's not how you get to build lifelong relationships with people like me. But if you show up and you give 10% more than you said you were going to give, and you're there as a friend in the trenches with me trying to get the job done, you're asking how to meet people that are, in my circle. My circle is almost exclusively off of people that I've run into in one situation or another, or at a networking event or whatever. But they're people that from the moment I met them, they wanted to help me solve problems. And you always remember the people who make your life a little bit easier. And it's very easy to spend money with those people because you know that they're reputable and you have a track record. So if you're not willing to, show up and show your value through action that's designed to help me, rather than just yourself, you're probably not going to get a lot of my time because I'm just going to get bored with you. Like, what's the point? Like, you're there to serve yourself, and I want you to, but how are you serving me? Why am I taking time out of my day? I have a couple of people that I mentor, and I have a couple amazing mentees in my life who, I'm a big believer in like building out that chosen family, especially in a professional world. And if you play your cards right, don't worry about how much you're making today. Worry about, am I a better person today than I was yesterday because I worked with this person? That's payment enough, because the money will follow. It can't help but follow. So, it's just really simple. It's go out there, give more than you take, and consistently learn. If you're not learning anything, you're stale, you're stuck. And the most frustrating thing I run into all the time are these MBAs that come in for interviews. And they have this idea of, oh, well, I'll take any job, but it's important that, I'm making about $200 a year starting out. And it's like, okay, cool. You want me to give you $200,000 a year. How do I do that and actually make it worthwhile for me to do that? Because I want to give you, you're telling me you want $200,000. Tell me how to give it to you. How can you earn it? You don't have an answer. Well, I went to school. That's cool. What have you done? Like, what have you actually built with your own hands? Or tell me about, the best thing I can tell somebody if they want to do better in interviews, and I'm an absolute master when it comes to interviews, like, getting a job. I've never had trouble getting jobs because I'm really good at that process. And maybe it's just I'm a really good bullshit artist. I don't know. But at the end of the day, the best thing you can do in an interview is explain a situation that you were involved in, explain what actions you took, and explain the outcome. What happened as a result of the actions you took? Was the situation better? Why was it better? Why are the things you did that you added to the equation so impactful? And a lot of people, they don't really teach that, it seems, in school, when answering interviews. And a lot of people come to me and they're like, well, I don't really know what to post. I'm out of ideas to post. And so one thing I posted on my LinkedIn, I was like, you start with a question. What is the question you're trying to answer? And if you can explain, I had this experience, these things were the actions I took, and this was the outcome. Yeah, you're talking about yourself, but you're doing it in a humble, direct, educational way. that isn't like, oh God, this guy just won't shut up. Which is often something I hear a lot is, James, shut up. But, I'll take a break here and let you jump in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would never tell you to shut up, James. I might say, hey, breathe, please. No, but all right. So something that, that I always ask is, let's say somebody's listening. They like your answers. They like your philosophy. They glean something from you, and they want to show their value by introducing you to the perfect ideal individual or company. Who should they introduce you to?
Who should they introduce you to? That's a good question. I didn't see it going that way. Nice. They should introduce me to somebody whose life I can improve in some way. And generally it's going to be somebody who they are willing to do the work. They just don't know how. There's a lack of knowledge. There's a lack of experience. There's something missing, but the effort, the hustle isn't what's missing. And if the hustle and the effort's there and they're a good, decent person. So like, I'll tell you, I answer every LinkedIn message. Anybody sends me a message, I'm going to answer regardless. And the reason I do that is, one, I want to build relationships. I want to increase my impact selfishly, but also I find some of the most interesting things I learn on a daily basis come from conversations we're having right now. We're talking about something. I don't have your life experience. You don't have my life experience. So maybe you did something good in a past life in that case, but we have different experiences, right? And when we listen to each other and allow people, give them space to show us who they are, and then we believe them, interesting things can happen.
Exactly. One last question. What's your definition of success?
I don't think it's monetary. I think a lot of people get hung up on the money game and how many zeros do I have in my bank account. My definition of success is, number one, do you have more than 2 or 3 people that you deeply love and care about? And if you do, your cup overfloweth. And then outside of that group, do you have a group of maybe a dozen people that you could call on and say, hey, I need help with something. Can you help me out? And they would at least either A, consider helping, or they would come through for you. I want to go back to one thing you said before, just really quickly, which was really insightful. You're talking about the difference between kindness and niceness. When I lived in LA, somebody told me, and it was dead on. It was great. The difference between somebody from LA or California, the really nice people out there, everybody's so nice. How are you? Oh, go for it. You're amazing. All that. And what's the difference between that and the thank you. Well, then on the Midwest side, right? It's like, you're an idiot, but I'll help you out, but you're an idiot. It's very different, right? Mm-hmm. But the difference is the person that's like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to you. I'm so sorry. That person is going to drive by, lower their window, see that you're changing a tire and you're having trouble with it and go, I'm so sorry about that. That looks terrible. Hang in there, and drive off. Where the person from the Midwest is going to go, you are an idiot. That's not how you use that tool. And they'll get out and help you and show you. And they're going to give you a lot of shit along the way, but they're going to make sure the tire's on the car and you're back up and running. That's really important to know in life. A lot of the people that you think are mean or you think aren't communicating with you in the way that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside, it's not my job to make you warm and fuzzy inside. It's my job to communicate to you what I need. It's my job to make you feel safe, make you feel heard, and go in and give you the tools you need to succeed. But at the end of the day, if I'm not communicating very effectively what I need, you're not going to be able to deliver what I need, which means that you're going to feel bad about yourself. You're going to feel like a failure. And I'm not looking to set people up to be a failure. Too many leaders, too many horrible leaders out there are too focused on making everyone like them and not focused enough on how do I set them up for success because they'll feel better when they succeed. And the irony of that is, at every company I've been a part of, I've always been the camp counselor. I'm the person that they come to when they're mad about something. And I used to open up my door or my drawer on my desk. I used to keep a bunch of kazoos in the desk drawer. And I'd say to people, they come in with their problem and they'd be like, oh my God, Becky's so mean, whatever. And so they're telling me all their issues. And I'd say, okay, I'm so sorry that's happening. Here's a kazoo, blow on this whenever you're having a bad day. And you would randomly hear in our warehouse, for example, burp, burp. And so you just knew, like, well, Rick's having a bad day. But it was great because it was a way to express frustration that sometimes is missing in companies, but also kind of a fun, like, inside joke that everybody's in on. So it kind of did a few things to bring the team closer and create a little bit of levity in frustrating situations. So that's just a little takeaway there.
Oh yeah, it deflated it, right? And I always tell people to the point that you made, as far as the people who say the right things versus the people who do the right things. Whenever you come across somebody that says, they're giving me mixed signals, they're giving me mixed signals, it's because they're trying to reconcile their words with their actions. And in my opinion, actions are far more important. You won't get mixed signals if you're paying attention to what they do, not how they say it, not what they say, but what they do action wise, like you say, make their lives better. And in return, they will be better. And your definition of success is great, because you can line up 100 successful people in a row and ask them what their definition of success, and they're going to give you 100 different responses. Sounds like your measure of success has to do with those at least three people that you care about, and at least 12 people that you can reach out to that will help you, or at least strongly consider it, or at least try to put you on the right path. So my last question to you, James Lang, are you successful?
Oh, absolutely not. I have a long way to go. I think anybody that says they are successful, number one, is probably.
How many more people you need on that list?
I don't think the list has ever done being built.
But that's why I ask people to.
Yeah.
But that's why I ask people to define it, right? Because it's like, all right, because I don't know. It might have been a conversation I was having earlier, but they mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't know if you ever read
intimately
that
familiar. I've actually talked to Robert before, the guy that wrote it, and I have some thoughts I'll share with you off the air. But yeah.
Robert
absolutely.
Kiyosaki. Now, and I've never met him personally, never had a conversation with him. But one thing that stuck out to me, and things that I've experienced, is a lot of people don't know when they're there. A lot of people, they sacrifice family, they sacrifice health, because they never established a definition of success, their definition of success. And even once they reach their definition of success, some of them can't even admit, life is a never ending journey. I have an LLC, a lifetime learning commitment, but I can say, per my definition of success, I'm successful today.
Randy, I got to push back very gently on that, because I don't think you're totally wrong. But I think the thing that you have to make room for in that explanation, and I'm a white guy with no rhythm, so I'm not going to do the full impression here. But one of the women I met, she told me, I just love the hum. I love being in the moment, and I've got the meetings, I've got this going on, I'm working. A lot of people in Hollywood in the production space will tell you the reason they got into production is because it's never ending. You're never done until the wrap, right? And so you get addicted to that hum. You feel really good and safe and functional, and you're just moving and moving and moving, and you feel like you're maybe dancing your way through with a bunch of other partners trying to get something done. And for me, that's what I really enjoy. So success isn't a destination, it's a lifestyle. And it's not a lifestyle in the sense of, do I have a Lamborghini? The only thing fancy about me, besides just, being a complete, professional Karen, when I don my wig of Karen, look out. But, besides that, my truck's the only thing that's really fancy about my life. I live pretty simply. I'm not here for the material things. I lived very differently in LA. I had a penthouse in LA and all that stuff. And I compare those two lives, and I'm much happier now, but I didn't know what I didn't know back then. So going back to your question earlier about, like, what do you wish you knew back then? it's not the things or the appearances that define you. Go experience those things. I'm not telling anybody to feel bad because they bought an expensive car or they live in a really nice house. Go for it. Experience those things in your life. But what I've found in my life is coming out of that season of life and in this season of life and what I'm building, I'm focused on simplicity. I don't want to be that guy running around his mansion trying to fix everything because the house runs him now because it's just so big and there's so many things to keep up with. It's these things that we buy, they end up owning us. And so it's much better and more sustainable to reduce the amount of stress, give yourself more options, and live life a little bit more simply. Spend money where you want to spend money. I'm not telling anybody how to live, but for me, I've just found when I reduce things, I'm going to fly first class because I'm a big guy. I don't fit in those seats. But other than these things, like there's a reason, right? There's always I'm solving this problem by spending money. It's not I'm showing off I'm getting these things because, Dave Ramsey, always says, nobody cares. The guy at the stoplight next to you doesn't give a crap about your car, good, bad, or otherwise. It's just in your head. And there's a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of wisdom in that.
One last time, James, please tell people how they can get in touch with you and what do you do?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, James Lang, Lang. You were nice enough to write it on the screen for me. So I'm glad I got it right, actually. I was reading, I was like, oh yeah, I got that. Okay, good. But anyways, find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you guys there. You can go to our corporate website, which is OverLang, Lang.com. And there you can get in touch with us. There's a contact form. Feel free to email me. It's james@overlang.com. We keep it really simple. I respond to every email, every LinkedIn message, maybe not right away, but I will get there eventually. And I value all of your experiences, and I hope that I can make yours a little bit richer too.
Oh man, James Lang, the most unsuccessful person I know. He defines success so well, and he's living his definition of success. Yet he is not successful. Hey, I love that that lifestyle approach. And once again, and I agree. I think everybody. One of my favorite speakers, Jim Rohn, said his mentor said. He said, I want you to earn $1 million. I want you to earn $1 million. And after you earn that $1 million, I don't care what you do it. You can give it away. You can throw it against the wall if you want. I want you to earn $1 million because of the man that you become, that you have to become to earn it. This has been another episode of the Entreprenudist Podcast, a place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. If you are listening to our voices, please make sure you check out the show notes and visit Entreprenudist.com. You can see more information about James Lang. You can also see the video of our beautiful ebony and ivory faces as we share and bear all. Once again, thank you, James Lang, for coming to the Entreprenudist Podcast.
This was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.